Okay, I'm gonna show you very quickly how I make chicken stock and bone broth from a whole chicken. So this is just a pot of water with a whole raw chicken in it. I put some herbs in there. I put sage and rosemary and thyme and a couple bay leaves, and then I put some salt. And that's the flavor that I like the most with chicken stock and with bone broth. You can do just water if you want. You can do just salt. You can choose your own spices, whatever it is you want to do. Very, very simple. Make it yours. Do whatever you want. But this is what I like the most. I really like all those herbs mixed together. I don't like pepper in my broth, so I don't ever put pepper in my broth. Maybe later, because it's good for digestion, but not right now. I've got it in this pot. Now, the chicken is almost completely submerged. It's good if it is completely submerged, but because of just the size of the chicken and the size of the pot, I wanted to leave about an inch from the top so it doesn't have the chance of boiling over. With having just a little bit of it exposed, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What you want to do is turn on your hot plate, not all the way to low, but probably like if it goes from like 0 to 10, I'd probably put it on like a 2, and just so it can simmer. So you're gonna let it simmer all night long or throughout the entire day. I mean, it can be anywhere from like 6, 8 hours. Really, it's going to depend on the type of stove that you have and also what level of heat that you put it on. It's really, really hard with something like a gas stove because it is just constant flame, constant heat coming, so it's nearly impossible to keep it at just a simmer like all night long without the water completely evaporating. So that is probably something really hard, but if you have a crock pot, you can do this in a crock pot. It's very, very easy. We like to do it in our back room so that it doesn't make the entire house smell like chicken. And so we just keep it back here and put it on this stove, but we do like to put it in the crock pot as well because that's really safe and it's very, very consistent and very easy to do. But if you just have a stove and a pot, you can do it like this. Now, all I'm going to do is put the lid on it, and we're just gonna let it simmer all night long, and then we'll check it in the morning and see how it's doing. It should be done. I mean, that's gonna be plenty of time, probably about 8 hours. So yeah, we're gonna see you in the morning. All right, it is morning time. I just pulled this off of the hot plate. And what we're gonna do, we're just gonna grab a fork and we're gonna stab it and see. I don't know if you can see that, but the chicken or the meat is just falling away from the bones. And the bones are like pulling apart, so that tells us that it is done. Also, it has been simmering all night long, so it is obviously done. That's way long enough. If you want to just cook the chicken, it's only gonna take like an hour and a half to 2 hours, really not that long. Again, depending on how high your heat is and if your chicken is all the way defrosted, because sometimes it won't be completely defrosted if you take it out of the freezer. But this one is totally done. So what we're gonna do is we are going to separate the chicken stock from the chicken, and then we're going to take all of the meat off of the bones, put the bones in a separate pot with water so that we can boil those down for bone broth. Okay, so now I've got my chicken stock, and you can either keep it like that to use it for whatever recipe that calls for chicken stock, or you can boil it down even further with the bones, which is what I like to do. So I'll keep this, I'll set it aside, and I'll separate the bones and the meat, which kind of can take a long time, so sometimes I'll like to just listen to a podcast or something while I do that. But we will then put the bones in with the chicken stock, and then we will boil it down even further. Okay, so I have my meat separated from my bones, and as you can see, there's quite a bit, but maybe not as many as you thought there would be. But there's a lot of chicken. So I love this method because it really does pull off as much meat as possible, and you're not wasting anything at all when you boil down your chicken and then when you boil down your bones. A couple of things that I would suggest as you are picking through the meat is pull out the entire neck and don't try to get off the little meat pieces from the neck, because there are a lot of super tiny bones, and you don't want to risk losing those in your meat and later possibly ingesting them and chewing them and choking. So take out the entire neck. I'd probably say the same with the ribs. The ribs are a lot easier to see, but there are a lot of tiny bones in chicken, and I just be very, very careful that you really finger through everything, especially like in the wings. A lot of super tiny bones in there. And then I always pull off the super hard fat pieces, or like the ligaments, the fat that is connecting the bones together, which here I can show you one right there if you see that. It's kind of clear, but yeah. We're gonna put this in a pot, and then we're gonna put it on the stove to simmer for nearly the whole day. Probably it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, so we'll probably simmer it until like 4 or 5. The longer the better, because the more collagen it'll pull out of the bones. So. And just like the chicken, I turn this on just like 2 out of 10. So very, very low, not enough to boil, but enough to simmer so that it can take that time to really pull the collagen on all the good stuff out of the bones. Okay, so it has been 24 hours since I started simmering the bone broth, because I looked at it yesterday afternoon and I wanted to boil it down a lot more. There was just a lot of liquid, and so yeah, so this is what it looks like. So it was probably about up to like right here when it started, and it boiled down a couple quarts. I like my bone broth to be able to fit into like one big jar and then maybe 1 quart jar. So this is probably what that will be. But also, the longer you boil it down, the thicker it's going to be, and the more nutrients it's going to pull out of the bones. So also another way that I like to tell if it's done, if I've really pulled out as much as possible, is if I take a bone, I'll actually reach in, grab a bone, see if I can find a big one. There we go. You see how the bone just like chips away like that? See that? That, to me, that's like, I pulled out everything as much as possible. I'd say that that is done, and now we are going to go strain it and put it in a jar. Okay, we're gonna let this cool off a little bit more before I put the lids on, and then I'm gonna put it in the fridge, and then you'll see a little later how gelatinous it is. And if it is really gelatinous, that's how I want it. I want it to be pretty thick, and if it's not, then I probably should have boiled it a little bit longer, but it's still going to taste really good. Okay, so this is after it's been chilled in the fridge for many hours. It is not as thick as I'd like it to be, but you can see that it is gelatinous the way that it moves. So that's still going to work out super great, and it's going to still taste really good. But yeah, thank you for watching this video, and good luck making your chicken stock and bone broth.